Guys, we got an absolute banger for you today.
Yeah. So let's play a game. What? But still think it's an interesting conversation.
Wait. Sacks or quarterback stat.
Oh, hell no.
Still got a few more to go.
Slow down, baby.
That's fair.
Finish him, Daddy.
Additionally,
Do you want to guess the last two?
No, it's my turn.
Because of how dangerous he is with his feet.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
And I think there's an interesting conversation.
No, God.
You know, that's just the nature of the beast in this business.
Well, here we are yet again for another week on Hashtag Sports. And we are talking head coach candidates with the Buffalo Bills. Lots and lots and lots are... Ryan actually is going to be joining us tonight. He had to restart his computer just as we went live because, hey, you know, that's all right. But lots to talk about from... oh, there you are. Hey, guy.
oh, hey, man.
Hey.
Okay.
So lots going on in Buffalo Bills land, coaching candidates left and right and center. And I think everybody's kind of having a little bit of burnout, right? A little coach burnout talk, because here you fire your head coach, you pray to God that there's a plan. Turns out, no plan. And now the scramble starts, right? So the Bills have been interviewing some candidates. We will go over those. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you are in the chat, obviously make sure to chat. If you are on the rewatch, leave a comment with who you think the Bills should hire and why. And thank you to Mr. Rogers Homes, the sponsor of the show. If you're looking for real estate in Arizona, make sure you hit up Sean, the sponsor for the Bills 2025 early exit 2026 season. Okay, so welcome everybody. And Ryan, let's start out with a banger. Philip Rivers pulled out. Not many people could say that. Philip Rivers
was never been able to say, that's for sure.
Yeah, no longer in consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rivers, you know, I mean, it was nice. I think he's trying to get into the coaching thing, right? And we've seen this with a lot of guys. Like Jeff Saturday is the one that comes to mind just most recently, right? Like, who just kind of skipped the line. And the way it worked out with Jeff Saturday, like, I don't think anybody can be upset that Philip Rivers like pulled himself out of consideration. Yeah. Sounds like he enjoyed the process. You know, maybe he gets into coaching at some point. Yeah. I don't think he'd be a bad coach necessarily. I mean, he's got the passion, he's got the knowledge that you want. I just think with a team like Buffalo, like if you truly think you're ready to move and ready to win, like that can't be the guy, right?
No.
So, you know, that's a situation where he went through the motions. He kind of self-selected, which was nice. So, yeah, I mean, nobody's upset about Philip Rivers. Cool story, but not anybody that I think was a serious candidate at any point in the process.
Well, I think that's part of the process as well, right? If you get an offer for a head coaching interview, you take it, right?
Sure,
like for guys who haven't been in that seat before, you get an offer, you take it. McDermott was on the radar for a long time. And he was very selective about where he went when he finally chose Buffalo. You know, his name had been circling for quite some time. He was selective, came to Buffalo, had a near decade run, reset the franchise. Like, I call that a success. Expect McDermott to be patient again in that.
Sounds like he's going to take the season off.
Yeah. I think that's just kind of who he is, right?
Yeah.
Like, no reason to rush back into this. He's got a family. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, where's he going to go? Cleveland?
Yeah. Right.
Like, who wants that? Who wants that? Any part of that?
Yeah.
So,
exactly. And plus, Philip Rivers, I think his son is a senior this year. So, I mean, it would take a lot for him. I mean, one of his many children. I guess for the next 20 years, we could always say
he's
that
got a lot of seniors coming up. Yeah,
he's got a lot of seniors, high school seniors, soon to be high school seniors.
I think he needs one more, and he could field the full football side of the field, right? He's got 10.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No. Isn't he at Antonio Cromartie level?
Is he? He could be. He might be.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody in the chat will fact check us on the number of children that Philip Rivers has. I thought it was 11. I really thought we were already at 11. I think Cromartie's at 14.
Man,
it's a lot.
It's a good thing these guys make money after the fact, or at least hopefully they have a good retirement plan. I guess.
Right. Yeah. So along with that, right, because again, we talk about guys who kind of jump into the conversation. Philip Rivers was a hot name. I think you take the interview because maybe he's having offensive coordinator thoughts, right?
Sure.
And this is something that he'd want the experience. He's a great guy to get into the room and talk to. Maybe he's a resource for Josh or the Bills at a later time, right? If he's showing interest in entering coaching.
By all accounts, him and Josh have grown tight over the years, and they've become friendly. Josh says he's learned a lot from Rivers, and who better to kind of guide the psyche of a guy who's more talented than the team that's around him and, still stick it out for as long as he did. I mean, Rivers was, arguably one of the better quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl, right? It's him, Marino, and I don't know how many other
I think that's the end of the list.
Them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the end of the list. Yeah. And I think kind of not to speak negatively, but I think Anthony Lynn kind of falls into that category of guys you're familiar with, guys who could benefit from getting a head coaching interview, kind of throw them a bone and say, listen, let's just put your name back on the list, right? Because he was interim head coach of Buffalo, ends up going to the Chargers. They relocate during the Anthony Lynn years, right? And that's always tough. And it was just, I think they're kind of throwing Anthony Lynn a bone here by saying, listen, you're on staff when we got here. It's one of the, yeah, sure, right? Like, we'll give you a chance again to come talk about the head coach position. He's jumped from franchises as a position coach, but, I don't think there's any bark or any bite to the Anthony Lynn bark at this point.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Commander's run game coordinator doesn't necessarily scream like ready to be a head coach again, right? Like some of these other
he was a running backs coach. He was a running backs coach when he got the head coach job.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think, Lynn, like you said, Lynn is probably a guy who it's just, hey, I'm looking to get my name back in the cycle. I haven't had an interview in a couple of years. I can't remember the last time he's interviewed for a head coaching job, but, just try to get his name back out there as maybe a possibility. And I think that's probably about all it was as well. So,
Yep. And Mike McDaniel decided not to interview with the Bills for the head coaching position. That one fascinated me a little bit. I'm not sure what conversations are happening behind the scenes, but hot name as far as an offensive coordinator. Sounds like he already has a job offer with the Chargers.
It sounds like that was part of it. So there was a news story that came out today that he actually has kind of withdrawn. He also withdrew his name from Cleveland, right? And the news came out today, like he's officially signed with the Chargers now. And it sounds like he was having second thoughts as to what that would say about his character if he took a job to be an offensive coordinator and then all of a sudden took a job to be a head coach. So, I don't know, maybe like +1 on the character side of things for Mike McDaniel, but it doesn't sound like he was spooked by any one particular franchise. It just sounds like he's like, hey, I took this job. I feel like I need to at least do a season with this job because I said I would do it. And, he didn't want to kind of spur the Chargers and kind of leave them in the lurch if they've passed on other candidates because of him, you know. So again, I mean, whether Bills fans are upset about that or not, I was fine with it. I mean, I could definitely, I would pay to see Josh Allen in a Mike McDaniel offense, but I guess I get to watch Justin Herbert in a Mike McDaniel offense, and that might be just as fun. So.
Well, I don't know why people like Justin Herbert, man. Like, he is not the NutraSweet version of Josh. I get the comparisons, but I mean, hasn't he proven at this point that he is nowhere close? Like, just nowhere close.
I mean, the thing with Herbert though, like we've seen him be like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Like we've seen him. I've watched games where he looks like he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, and then I've watched games where he's like, man, him and Trevor Lawrence would make a really interesting quarterback battle, right? Like he's been that bad before too. So like, I don't know, but like I still hold out hope for Justin Herbert just because I've seen him do it at a super high level. And I think that puts him ahead of a lot of these guys where I haven't seen them with any consistency be really, really good.
Respectfully, I always take a grain of salt when East Coast guys start talking about West Coast quarterbacks, because we all know how many beers we're in on a Sunday to believe that Justin Herbert had a great game. Like I can't go on that journey with you. Another familiar face was Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator from the Dolphins. Again, kind of interesting on McDaniel withdraws. Maybe that's to help Weaver if he's really not interested in the job in Buffalo. Anthony Weaver was the Bills' defensive line coach under Doug Marrone in 2013. Yeah, so another familiar face. He's been the DC for the Dolphins 2024 and 2025. Again, like we're talking about another former, it's perspective, another former player, 7 seasons as a defensive end for the Ravens and the Texans. I get it, but again, another situation where I would just be shocked if this was the guy moving forward.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, I would be shocked if it's any defensive-minded guy in general. Weaver was interesting in that, like, they were talking about him potentially being the head coach in Miami if they let McDaniel go. And then when they let McDaniel go, like, they're not going to hire Anthony Weaver. So it's really interesting, like, to kind of see that change. But he is also interviewing with Arizona. It sounds like he's a legit candidate out in Arizona.
Yeah.
Which might be good, right? Like, it's a rebuilding opportunity, first time head coach, but with some experience, right? Like, he's 45. He's a little older than some of these guys that are getting their first head coaching opportunities. But former player and a good player. Like, he was a guy that I knew, right? I knew he played in the NFL. I knew who he played for, which is not something you can't say for a lot of these guys, right? Who are like, he's a former player. I'm like, I've never heard of him before. You know, and I think that Miami Dolphins defense last year, not this year, last year was a pretty good squad for the most part until they had those injuries come about when Phillips went down and they lost Ramsey. Like, that was a pretty good defense up until that point. So, you know, yeah, I mean, Anthony Weaver, I don't think he's a legitimate candidate because I don't think they're going defense, but, you know, good for him. You know, and again, I hate to think this way, but up until that point, like, they hadn't checked the Rooney Rule second box yet because they did Anthony Lynn. They hadn't checked the box yet.
Right.
Weaver matches that. Now Scheelhaase, who's a guy we're going to talk about, like, he's also going to check that box. But, you know, again, it doesn't hurt to interview these guys that are hot names, or at least other teams are. If you're doing this right, like, you're interviewing all of the guys that were interviewed by other teams too. And I think that's what they're doing here.
And there's a huge youth movement amongst the players amongst the people that Buffalo is interviewing, right? Like, really, there's not many people on this list over 45 years old.
Nope.
It's the way that coaching is working right now. I think you saw that with McVay, right? And I really think Sean McVay's had a positive impact on, you know, the phasing out of senior coaches, right? Like, senior head coaches. You still see them, obviously, right? But the younger names seem to be more appealing. And unfortunately, when you get younger names, you normally get guys with far less experience. That's where a guy like, you know, Grant Udinski comes in. Really very little experience. You know, he's 30 years old. Like, like he's the youngest candidate on the list as far as who Buffalo is interviewing currently. And when it comes to Udinski, you know, he's an offense coordinator under a first-time head coach in his first year. Yeah, Jacksonville was great, but I think there's too many question marks here, even though, I mean, they ran an offense that averaged almost 32 points a game in the second half of the season, right? So definitely figured it out. I just don't think there's enough of a track record here to make Udinski a real candidate. He did pull out of interviews for other teams to focus on Buffalo, but he's already back as Jacksonville's offensive coordinator. Like, they're not going to let him go unless he gets a head coaching position, and rightfully so for what that offense looked like. But I just simply don't believe that there's enough here to think that he's a real candidate.
I think there's enough here. Like, I mean, he comes from, I mean, he coached under Kevin O'Connell, right, for the last 2 years up until he went to Jacksonville. You can argue that this has been Trevor Lawrence's best season as a quarterback. And they didn't really have a ton of talent. Like, Brian Robinson Jr. didn't do a ton. They had Travis Etienne, who, you know, James Cook is miles better than Travis Etienne. I mean, their best wide receiver wasn't until the trade deadline when they went out and got Jacoby Myers. So, like, I mean, when you talk about a guy who did a lot for a franchise with not a ton of talent and certainly not as talented at the quarterback position, like, Udinski, I think, is a guy that you keep an eye on. You know, and Sam Darnold gave a lot of credit to Udinski with his time in Minnesota last year for, like, revitalizing his career, because remember, like, Sam Darnold was dead to the world until he got to Minnesota, right? And then it was under O'Connell and Udinski that he revitalized his career, and now he's going to the Super Bowl before any of those 2018 quarterbacks. So, I mean, I think Udinski's very real in this thing. I think he's got an uphill battle because now that a guy like Davis Webb can get involved in the process, and, like, he knows Josh, he played with Josh, like, he played for this franchise, like, check on the boxes. But I think, I mean, if it's me, it's these three young guys that it's going to come down to for Buffalo. It's going to come down to Udinski, it's going to come down to Webb, and it's going to come down to Scheelhaase. And I know we'll kind of talk about the other two, but Udinski, I think, is a very real possibility right now.
Yeah, and, you know, perhaps I have a feeling like a lot of fans, they kind of look at your last stop, right? And they kind of think that that's your career. And first-year head coach Jacksonville was a big surprise. And kudos to them, right? It looks like they've figured it out, but it does show how quickly a coach can make or break a franchise, right? But I'll tell you what, Liam Cohen's interview when he got that job was dreadful. I had Adam Gase vibes. Like, it was weird. It was a weird press conference. Like, you go back and watch it, still rubs me the wrong way. It was just a creepy press conference. Right.
I mean, he's a weird dude. He's a weird cat,
Yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he is. And Davis Webb, coming out of college, was a quarterback with a monster arm and just no mobility, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the deal there. He was Ben Roethlisberger without the mobility, right?
Yeah.
Which is not great.
Yeah, because Ben Roethlisberger wasn't super mobile, right? Like he could move, but
yeah. And he just didn't have the elusiveness, right? But clearly was coveted because he immediately stopped playing and instantaneously went into coaching. Like, it did not take him long to get a job within an organization. And he was somebody who bounced around amongst organizations. So for him to find his footing in coaching is kind of a surprise as quickly as he was able to do it. So again, 31 years old. He only began coaching in 2023. Stop me if you've heard this before, right? And the fact is, he is a huge target, and I don't really understand why, because Denver doesn't throw the ball that much, right? He's Broncos passing game coordinator, and Denver does not throw the ball all that much. Like, what is so impressive about Davis Webb that his name skyrockets up the list?
Well, I mean, I think you would be surprised how much Denver threw the ball this year. So, I mean, I'm going to look it up, but I believe Bo Nix was maybe
he threw more than
top
Josh.
5.
Yeah,
I think he was maybe top 5 in attempts this season.
Was he really?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say he was top 5. He was number 1 in passing attempts this season.
Wow. I take back what I said.
Times. Yeah, 612 times they threw the football. So, like, you know, and Bo Nix completed 63% of his passes. He threw for almost 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns. Like, you know, and that's Bo Nix. And he's not Josh Allen. Like, he's not even in the same stratosphere as Josh Allen. We saw it in the playoff game, right? Like,
no.
So, I mean, I think there's that for Webb. I think there's this movement of, like, let's get the guy before he becomes the guy kind of movement where, I mean, these guys, you know, they've all coached on the tree, right? They've all coached on the Shanahan tree. It's Shanahan, McVay, and like everybody who's coached for them all of a sudden immediately moves to the top of the list for coaching candidates. And I think Webb is right there. He's coached for Peyton. Like, what better guy to teach you how to run an offense than Sean Payton? I think there's a lot to that with Davis Webb too. And as a former player who played in the league for a while, that comes with, you know, some cachet with a lot of these players too. I mean, we've seen it with Vrabel, right? Like, Vrabel was a better player than Webb was, but I think these former players get it, and the NFL players seem to respond better to guys who get it, unless they're these bombastic type of leaders like a Matt LaFleur and Ben Johnson, right? Like, these guys have to have the personality, and if you don't, it helps if you've been a player.
Well, I think the maturation is quicker, right? So you just as an example, right? If you pull back and really think about, you know, like coaches who had an instantaneous impact, they are very often players who are not far removed from their playing career, right? Yeah. Because they still speak the same language. They're still familiar with personnel. You know, they're very familiar from an on-field perspective of how the game still flows. So, yeah, and I think there's also a large conversation here, Rye, about that McVay and Shanahan coaching tree and just how different it is from the McDermott coaching tree. Right? Sure. Like from the Andy Reid coaching tree. It is a completely different style of offense. It is often, you know, defense be damned, right? Like that's kind of the approach. And a lot of those coaches who come from that line of thinking say, I'm going to take care of the football offensively. I'm going to hire a defensive coordinator to worry about the defense. I'm going to hire somebody just to own that piece of it. And Reid finally figured that out.
Right? Yeah, that's
exactly.
what they're there for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this week will be really telling, right? Because they can't talk to, well, they can, right? They can talk to Kubiak if they set up a virtual interview.
Right.
And he's the other name that's out there, right?
Yeah.
Clint Kubiak is the other hot name that's out there. You know, the question is, do they wait for a Clint Kubiak? And if they do, that means they're going to miss out on a Scheelhaase. He's probably going to go to Cleveland if that's the case. Davis Webb, does he bolt to the Raiders, or do the Raiders wait for Kubiak as well? It's going to depend. Like, can they stick around, or do they stick around long enough? And Paul, I guess I'll pose the question, like, if they don't stick around long enough to talk to Kubiak, like, will you feel like this process was done the right way? Like, do they have to talk to all of the names for you to feel like they've done their due diligence and chosen the right coach?
I mean, this is the problem that every team runs into every year, though, right? When a team makes it real deep, every team is a product, is beholden to this, NFL rule about you can't talk to certain guys within certain windows while they're still in the playoffs. And I agree with that, having been, a fan of a team that often went into the playoffs. I agreed with these, right? I guess the piece of it that kind of rubs me a little bit the wrong way is the fact that there's so many teams that are so viciously looking for head coaches that this year's a little bit different than other years, right? Where there's so many teams just trying to cut each other's throat for young coaches. Even with some of the hires that have already happened, like when Miami made their hire, I was like, man, what is Miami racing for? Like, who are they trying to boat race? Right? Like, the names that most teams that have a clue would be interested in. Now, a lot of them are still on the board right now. Like, I haven't looked at any of these coaching hires and been like, man, they really nailed that one. Like, these are the names that Buffalo's waiting for. Like, teams like Cleveland, teams like the Raiders, they should wait for Buffalo. They should pick up the scraps after Buffalo. Buffalo's the best job, and every single candidate on the list should know that and not race to Cleveland or the Raiders or be out positioned. If they're on the list now, they'll be on the list next year. So, like, what's the race?
Yeah, and I mean, I think you saw that today because Cleveland was scheduled to meet with Scheelhaase in person. Mm-hmm. They flew to LA to meet with him, right? Like, they want him bad. And we talked to Spencer, right? Spencer's in our group chat. Spencer covers the Browns. He's pretty dialed into that. He thought that today was going to be the day that the Browns hired Scheelhaase. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden this morning, it was like, hey, by the way, the Bills are requesting a conversation with Scheelhaase, and everything got put on hold. And he was like, yeah, you guys can come talk to me in person, but like, I'm taking this virtual call with Buffalo, and like, he's going to see this process through with the Bills. So like, that's the impact, not of Buffalo. That's the Josh Allen impact, right? Like, that's the fact of like, oh, I'm the Rams passing game coordinator, and look what we did with Stafford. What do you think I could do with this guy, right? And so I think that, coupled with the fact that, like, you're right, the playoff rules are a little bit different. But as Spin pointed out in the chat, like, teams that didn't make the playoffs are ahead of the game, right? Because teams that didn't make the playoffs already did a virtual interview with a guy like Kubiak, which means now during the bye week, they can meet with him in person. Buffalo can't do that. Buffalo has to only meet with him virtually this week if they decide to meet with him. So the question that you have to ask if you're a Bills fan is like, does Kubiak take a virtual interview with Buffalo? Or does he just say, you know what, I'm going to wait until after the Super Bowl. If you guys want to talk to me, you got to wait. And maybe some of that is just him playing the game, right? Because if he waits and Buffalo gets trigger happy or Las Vegas gets trigger happy, like, okay, cool. Like, you guys didn't want me anyway. I'll just take the other job that's available. Or I'll go back one more cycle, right? Like, if Seattle wins this Super Bowl, like, I could see him running it back. Why not? Right? Like, you've got a pre-built team. Everyone's coming back next year. Like, it would be ideal for him to just run it back. But, I think if you're Buffalo, I think you wait as long as you can. You've got feelers out into the Kubiak camp to just kind of talk about, like, hey, are we a legitimate option here? And if we are, I think you need to wait for him, because he's by far, from an offensive play calling perspective, like all these guys we talk about, like, he's the only one with actual play calling experience. Right? So, like, you have to wait for him because Webb's never called plays. Scheelhaase hasn't called plays. Udinski called plays for one season. Like, Kubiak is a coach's son. Like, he's now coaching in the Super Bowl. Like, there's every reason to think that he's the best candidate if you think he's a legitimate candidate for Buffalo.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, it would take a pretty apocalyptic collapse for his name to fall off the list next year. Right. Oh yeah. It would have to be
he will be Ben Johnson next year. Right. Yeah. Like, he'll be Ben Johnson.
That's fair. Yeah. I think that's fair. But I mean, if we're talking Scheelhaase and Kubiak, I think we have to go back to who would really be the best fit for Buffalo from a play style perspective. And like, Kubiak is a play action and efficiency guy I mean, typically heavy outside zone runs, like we've seen that before in Buffalo. Kind of uses game script to set up deep shots. That's not really Josh's game, right? It's Josh is going to do what Josh is going to do. Scheelhaase is a little bit more of like volume and tempo. And watching Stafford last night reminded me that Stafford can make throws that Josh can't, right? As far as,
Anticipation,
being patient and and those anticipatory throws. But I mentioned it in the chat. Josh throws footballs into windows that don't exist and completes those passes, right? So it's like a trade-off. And somebody like Scheelhaase, you get Scheelhaase and Josh together. I don't know if they're going to speak the same language because Josh is a little bit of a different animal. With Kubiak, I feel a little bit more comfortable. But again, Kubiak's the only one with any legitimate play calling experience between the two of them. But they're very different styles of offense. And if we had to pick one or the other, I'd lean more towards Kubiak because I feel like Josh is closer to that as far as the type of player that would be the type of offense he needs to be really successful. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's a valid point, right? Like we've seen the best of Josh, and the best of Josh is when he's on tempo and he's going quick and he's not having to process as quickly, and he can just kind of make a read, make a throw. Josh, like Stafford, you're right. Like Stafford is going to throw the ball when the receiver still has his back to him, right? Like those are the balls he's going to throw. Josh sees a guy open before he throws him open. He's just got the arm strength to get it there in those windows where most guys don't, right? Like most guys, if you wait until someone's open, like a corner's going to close on that or a safety's closing on that and it's going the other direction. So like, I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, Scheelhaase has a direct line to Sean McVay, like, which is not a bad thing because McVay, by all accounts, stays in contact with his coordinators. He did it with Kevin O'Connell. He's doing it with LaFleur in Green Bay, right? Like, it sounds like he's a regular conversation with these guys. Not a bad thing to have at your disposal. Like, I kind of get Sean McVay at the same time to like help this guy through the process and like teach him how to call plays and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, can we just talk about like how refreshing it is to talk about like an offensive coach coming to Buffalo instead of like watching what we've watched over the last few seasons? And like the other thing, like this whole Sean McDermott thing has been, I don't know, man. Like it's been just like kind of a crazy look for the Bills fans and like a crazy look for the franchise. Like the franchise handled this so poorly. Like it was so bad, right? Like I've talked about how I disagree so much with the way Pagula runs this franchise. And like, I've called him on Rock Power Report. I've called him like the worst owner in professional sports. And like, it was just characteristic of that franchise to handle that firing the way that they fired him. That said, like nobody can make the argument that Sean McDermott deserved another season. Like miss me on that. There was no like this whole thing where it's like, well, this was his best coaching job in the 10 years he's been coach. That's fine. But like, just because he was great this year doesn't mean that he didn't deserve to get fired the last 4 seasons that we've watched him, right? Like that doesn't excuse those things away. It's just, yeah, he did a great job coaching this team up. But I also think like maybe this team was more talented than some of us thought they were in terms of like just depth and experience and like all the things. And
it was the lack of awareness over a near decade, right? Like I think you have to be able to sort of self-reflect and determine the things that you're really strong at, the things that you're weak at, the things that you need help in, the things that you don't need help in, and the areas to which you could just communicate better. And I think his game management was dreadful for the first 5 years of coaching. I think it did get better over time, although it was never great. I like the aggressiveness this year because they went for it on 4th down twice as many times as they did the year before. So, I appreciate that. Same token, right? You still have the bonehead decisions. And I truthfully believe that he feels like a lot of the things that happened on the field were not the product of his decisions, but were by the product of the grace of God. Right. And he kind of took his hands off the wheel to say, well, I put it in God's hands. Like, no, you didn't need to go try and squeeze out 3 points before halftime. That was God didn't care about the Bills winning or losing.
It just goes back there's just so many Jerry Hughes even tweeted it out, right? Like Jerry Hughes tweeted out last night something about McDermott, and somebody, I don't know if you saw the whole thing, like somebody commented like, why'd you leave Buffalo? And his answer was after 13 seconds, I knew he was an unserious head coach. Like, and by all accounts, like Ty Dunn was on Colin Cowherd and he talked about it again, the article that he wrote, at the beginning of last season. Where
why wouldn't you talk about that again?
Yeah. I mean, where, the special teams coordinator wanted to squib kick it. He overrode him and kicked it deep. And then he fired the special teams coordinator. He tried to take play calling away from Leslie Frazier in 13 seconds. And then he tried to do it at the beginning of the season. So Frazier walked. And at the end of the game, 13 seconds, after the game was over, he walked into the locker room and said something along the lines of the offense left too much time on the clock. That was what he said in the locker room after that game was over. And then said to the coaching staff, you guys got to figure out what went wrong there, and then left for the offseason. I called for him to be fired then, at that point in time, because that to me was indicative of a coach that didn't get it, wasn't willing to take accountability, and just screwed up the most unscrew upable moment in time. You were leading the game with 13 seconds left on the clock and you were kicking off. There was no way to lose that football game. So that, and then you compound it with the bad challenges and the defensive miscues and the playoff losses and that 13-second game, as long as McDermott was the head coach, that game was going to reign over this franchise forever and evermore. I'm convinced that was their Red Sox Babe Ruth moment, right? That was the moment where it's this team, the way it's comprised with Josh Allen as quarterback and Sean McDermott as head coach, is not going to win a Super Bowl, may not even get to a Super Bowl because of the specter of that moment and what it means for this franchise. It just wasn't going to be something they were going to overcome. So you cut your losses. But then they cut their losses the way they did. And now the franchise fan base all of a sudden is you did this guy dirty. You did him wrong. He's such a nice guy. And he did such a good job with this team. And it's we're losing the narrative here, guys. He's 0-8 in divisional rounds. He's not good enough. And at what point are we going to admit he's not good enough? They finally got there. Now we're in the coaching search. And just get it right. Just get it right, and flip over every stone you can, and you got to find the right guy. I mean, this is the pressure that Bean's now under, right? Because now he's got to find the right guy, because there's no other scapegoat for Bean anymore.
I look at it this way: the Bills, anytime a playoff team fires the head coach, they're behind the 8 ball, right? Because the process starts really late. It's the same reason why I hear people say, "Well, they fired McDermott. Bean should have gone too." You were too late in the process. I understand that people don't want to let Brandon Bean, in their opinion, screw up another draft. But the truth is, you were so late in the process that letting go of your general manager, who's going to draft? Who's going to draft? You have no coach.
Well, and
no
that also
GM.
means that Terry Pagula is probably going to have a pretty hefty say in who the head coach is. And I don't think you want that again either, right? When you hired McDermott.
But you're letting your quarterback make that decision. And I'll be honest with you, Josh has chosen Ken Dorsey, and he's chosen Joe Brady
and Dawson Knox extension.
Josh has had influence already. And I understand that maybe they needed to do that to kind of placate the fact that they fired McDermott without telling him. Although, in my opinion, he doesn't need to be consulted on that. He's a player. Is he the franchise player? Absolutely is. Yes, of course. But he should not know before Sean McDermott knows. The media finding out about that, I always question how teams do this, right? You're meaning to tell me the best way to tell the 53 players that you've dragged all over the country for the last 9 months and spent every weekend with for the last 9 months, most of the week with, the best way for them to find out you fired McDermott was because, it just happened to happen after our last team meeting, after locker clear. We just couldn't get everybody back in the room. That's a joke.
You couldn't send a group text?
That's a joke. Yeah, couldn't do anything. Yeah. The players found out through the media. That's embarrassing as an organization. You have to be better. And you just can't let that kind of stuff happen. And that good organizations don't make that mistake. right?
Yeah, it's like
You
it's
get
just
in front
little
of the
things,
players
right?
as soon as
It's
possible. Yeah, come
absolutely,
on.
absolutely. It's that. It's the misspelling in the first sentence of the announcement that's put out by the team.
Mhm.
It's the 2 days that it takes to put out the thank you video to
Mhm.
McDermott. And again, I wanted McDermott fired a long time ago, but I'm not going to ignore what he did for this franchise, right?
Right.
Like he dug them out of like the cellar of the NFL. Like this was, I mean, I was paying for season tickets 20 seasons ago. I was paying, nothing for my season tickets to go watch this dumpster fire of a football team. And
Mhm.
like, they're not where they are today, which is on the cusp of being like a Super Bowl ready team with an absolute franchise unicorn quarterback. They're not here without McDermott, right?
Mhm.
Like they are still a joke of a franchise.
Yeah.
That's just kind of wandering around the nomad world. They're still
Mhm.
drafting in the top 10 every year. Like McDermott did that for this franchise, and I felt like even though it was time for him to go, and I wanted him gone, and I was unhappy with him as the head coach. Like the way that they handled it was unacceptable for a professional franchise, a professional
Mhm.
organization in general, right? Like this
Right.
guy got you back to relevancy, got you to the playoffs, got you to the divisional round, got you a division title, almost every season. Like that deserved to be celebrated, and I didn't feel
Mhm.
like the Bills celebrated that. And then to
Well,
top it off, then they trot out their owner
mhm.
who tries to railroad the guy on the way out the door, right? Instead of
Yeah.
just coming out and saying, "Listen, he underperformed in the playoffs. We felt like he reached his ceiling. We were ready to move on. Done
Mhm.
and done." That was the messaging. Because that was the reason,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't because he was the one that wanted Coleman. It wasn't like these other things. All he needed to say was, I felt as a franchise that we were better than where we performed in the playoffs. We felt like we reached our ceiling with Sean. We wish Sean the best of luck, but we feel like we need to go a different direction.
Mhm. Yeah,
End of story.
and along the way, you completely extradite Keon Coleman. Like, we'll
You
talk about
extradite
complete.
Coleman. You make
Yeah.
Bean look like an absolute,
Yeah.
like people are referring to him as a snake in the grass, right? When
Mhm.
it's like,
Yeah.
again, like for those who feel that way about Brandon Bean, like when two guys are fighting and one wins, don't be mad at the guy who wins. Be mad at the person who made two guys fight for one position.
Right.
Right? Like that's Terry
Yeah.
Pagula. If Terry Pagula made this a Sean or Brandon discussion, it's Pagula's fault that this happened. It's not
Mhm.
Bean's fault because there are 32 GM jobs in this NFL and there's
Mhm.
32 head coaching jobs. And if you don't think that any 32 on either side of of things wouldn't fight tooth and nail to keep their job, I got another thing to tell you. Like, so don't be mad at Bean for winning.
Mhm.
Be mad at Terry for creating a situation that one of them could win. Because
Mhm.
honestly, they both should have been gone. Timing,
Well,
whatever that looked like there should have been a machination of Brandon's gone. We're gonna, Sean's gone. Brandon's gonna help us hire a new coach. He's gonna see us through the draft, just like they did with Doug Whaley. And then when
yep.
the draft is over, they go find a new GM. Like that should have been the way that this worked. Instead,
Well, it's still
you've been
possible.
bold and beat. I mean, it is, but you don't
Still
give a guy a
possible.
raise to fire him in 6
I
months.
get
Like
it.
that's not
I
going to
know.
happen, right? Like
I know.
let's be realistic here. So I mean, it's just a failing of the organization, and I just think it's just indicative of Terry Pagula and the way he runs his franchises. Like the Sabres were a joke for how long? The Bills have been a joke for a long time, and now they're a laughing stock because they've got a generational quarterback and they can't get to the Super Bowl. Like it's just indicative of everything. But he got his new stadium, so what does he care, right?
So interesting about the Sabres, when they fired Kevin Adams, the new general manager walked into the locker room and told all the players that they were replaceable. And shockingly enough, they went on a winning streak.
Oh, it's
for a
almost
year
like
and
they're
10
playing for their
months.
jobs, right?
I know,
Like,
right?
Light a fire.
Yeah, but that is true. That is true. That was confirmed by
And
Sabres
again, I
players
think
this
was there
last day or
something
two.
there to Sean's aggressiveness this season? Like, did
Well,
McDermott
yeah.
know? Like, was there something said to him?
I'm
And
gonna
I
disagree
don't
a
know
little
that we'll
bit.
know that. I don't know that we'll
Yeah.
know that, right? Unless Sean comes out and says it.
After the press conference, they were pretty willing to state that they had done everything possible to recover that relationship. So with McDermott and Bean to make it work, they were really like Pagula seemed very willing to just tell you whatever you asked, and many things that you didn't ask. So if there was a point where they felt Bean and McDermott, if the relationship had gotten to a point where Bean says, I can't do the moves that I need to make because you're restricting what I need, I need you to step back from player personnel and do it in an official way, right? Pull the three of them together and say, listen, I'm struggling here. I got moves that I want to make. Sean's restricting me. I need you to have my back and get him off of player personnel. I need you to get off my back, right? If that conversation happened and McDermott is later fired after the season because what happened is what happened, then that's understandable. But to just pretend that everything was okay and then all of a sudden say, well, I walked into the locker room, I saw my players crying and they were sad, so I fired the head coach.
Right?
Like that is what he said. Like
you
it's
made
not
Josh
verbatim,
cry, so you get fired. Like, what are we doing here?
I know.
Like this guy, it's ridiculous. Like,
yeah,
I can't even imagine. I can't even believe that he said that in a press conference. Like, I saw Josh crying, so I fired the coach.
He was.
What he said,
Sean McDermott was fired because of the results of Thursday's game. Why did you lose? A bad call. Like, what conversation are we having?
You can't do that, man. Yeah, you can't do that because that absolves him of any ownership. Again, right? Like, I talked about this last week. Like, the refs gave him his scapegoat. He's been creating scapegoats his entire career in Buffalo. And they gave him one on the way out the door, right? Like, and now it's an incompetent owner that had a knee-jerk reaction to watching his favorite player cry, like he's a 7-year-old watching the game at home, and like so I fired my coach. Well, why'd you keep Bean? Well, he didn't make Josh cry, so he got to stay, right? Like, what are we doing here? So I think that's another reason that, again, like, for people, everyone who wanted
paraphrasing. We're paraphrasing the example, right?
Of course. But everyone who wanted Bean gone along with McDermott, like, just keep in mind that that's the guy who would have been choosing your head coach without any type of oversight.
Yeah.
And a new GM, right? Like, at least if you move on from Bean after the draft or after next season, at least there's an adult in the room in the form of a head coach that can help you make a decision on a GM, right? Like, because if he gets rid of Sean and Bean at the same time, who's the adult in the room that's going to go, nah, Terry, that's probably a bad idea, right? Like, or no, that isn't actually a thing, even it sounds cool and has really pretty colors to it. Like, that's not actually something you want to pay attention to. Because he absolutely is a guy that strikes me as like a really fancy PowerPoint. We'll just do him in and he'll buy whatever that guy's selling.
So Jack comes in with a super chat. Thanks again, Jack. Much appreciated. We'll know immediately after the draft and free agency who was behind these roster constructions. So that's good, at least, right? I mean, that is true, because I think Bean cries wolf a little bit here by saying I could only do what Sean would kind of let me do, right? And that's the feeling that I got. I know he didn't say that directly, but that was sort of the feeling that I got from Bean. Was saying, like, I could only get players that fit in the box that I was told I was allowed to fit in. And the Bills were in an interesting situation because McDermott was there first. So McDermott was involved in personnel. That should have just been a 1-year thing when they were adding on a GM, but it kind of just stayed a thing forever. And I think that's just because Bean and McDermott were so comfortable with each other, being so familiar with each other from the past, that they were willing to kind of get on the same page right away. It wasn't a big deal if McDermott had say in personnel, but that should have matured, and that responsibility should have waned away from McDermott and fully onto Bean after a couple seasons, and that just never happened. So I am wildly concerned about how Brandon Bean's going to manage a roster where you've got like 60% of your salary cap dictated to like the top 6 players. Like, you're paying 2 tackles, a quarterback, a tight end, a wide receiver 1 money to Josh Palmer. Like, you got problems. You're paying Joey Bosa this year. He's not even going to be on the team. Like, Bean has a lot of roster management to clear up. So you better hope and pray he nails the draft, because you're not going to get any free agents this year. You're going to see players bought out from their contracts and released and then replaced with, you're going to see them replaced with guys that you might not be familiar with. Like, you're going to see Dawson Knox probably go and get replaced with somebody whom you don't know. And that's just going to be the way that goes. And
I mean, I think that will be, I mean, that
be what happens.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's one of the moves that I think will be telling it here. Like, if they actually pull the trigger on Knox, like they should, I think that's indicative of, like, I mean, because I'm a believer that Sean McDermott strikes me as a guy who wants to keep his guys and like wants to keep consistency, wants to keep the locker room going. And like, that's why guys get signed. That's why Rousseau, who underperformed, got a huge contract. That's why Milano came back despite being over the hill. Same with Bernard. Same with, like, insert name here, Taron Johnson gets a big extension, right? So like, Knox, by all accounts, was
top
still
8
here.
cap hits, by the way, too.
Yeah, like Knox is still around because he's Josh's buddy, and like he was a decent tight end. But then you also went out and drafted Kincaid in the first round. So like, what are you doing signing a big money tight end and you're not running 2 tight end sets? Like, so I think Knox will be a big signing. I think whether, if they decide to pack him away and send him off like they probably should. I think the emergence of Jackson Hawes probably makes that a little bit easier, right? Because you still have 2 pretty good tight ends. Yeah, but I mean, you will know quick because, like you said, like if there's some, if Bean is back to doing his wheeling and dealing like he had done earlier in his tenure, a lot of trades in the draft, a lot of move ups, a lot of move backs to get extra pieces. That's gone away the last couple of years. If you aside from the Keon Coleman draft where they traded back. I mean, but other than that, they haven't done a ton of wheeling and dealing like he used to do, right? And I think that's partly of just like we have to get roster construction.
You don't have the leverage.
We have to get guys. We don't want to. We kind of lose that. So I think that will be a big sign. And then if they bring in an offensive-minded head coach, logic says that you go get offense in the first round, right? Like that to me kind of makes sense there. So. And you're right. Like a coach shouldn't have say over player personnel, but a coach should have say in the decision, right? Like that. Like the 2 are different. They don't have say over it, but they get a say in who gets picked. And I think they lost that because of the familiarity from Carolina. Now they came to work together. McDermott was hired before Bean, so like that dynamic was kind of like flipped upside down a little bit. I don't think Pagula ever made the reporting structure very clear.
Strong leadership.
You can't.
Strong leadership vets that out, right? You look at that as saying, listen, we could do this for a year or 2, but this is something that's not your responsibility, right?
Yeah.
This is the responsibility of the position that we hired. That position is now filled. We're comfortable with the direction that's going. It's time to just cycle that responsibility out. Like it just time you missed the window to do that. Now, the one thing I will mention, because we're going down an interesting road here, Joe Brady and Brian Daboll are the familiar faces in the room. How much does hiring Joe Brady or Brian Daboll as your head coach impact keeping players that were there or that they're already familiar with, like a player like Dawson Knox as an example? Is his roster spot hinge on Joe Brady or Brian Daboll being hired as head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, right?
I
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that like Davis Webb is necessarily going to keep Dawson Knox at, if it's like, hey, I can have Dawson Knox or I can have insert wide receiver 3 name here, right? Like, why would you keep Dawson Knox when you've got Dalton Kincaid and Jackson Hawes?
Right.
Whereas if you got Daboll, who was there for Dawson Knox's rookie season, like familiar with him, probably, somewhat friendly with him. By all accounts, Daboll got along great with the players. It was just him and Sean clash. That's why he left. And then obviously Brady's got a system that Brady wants to run. It's a system he ran last year. And that was a lot of 3 tight ends. It was a lot of Dawson Knox. So yeah, I mean, I think their job does, at this point kind of hinge on the fact of, do they bring in one of these guys that's familiar with the franchise?
Yep. We do have a super chat we want to get to. Thank you, Whiskey Fox. Call me insane. Trade Allen for Mahomes. Mahomes
You're
is
insane.
minus. You're insane. Mahomes is minus knee ligaments right now, so I am not going to make that deal. It's that Mahomes injury, terrible timing, right? He's going to miss so much time, but that's the nature of football. And unfortunately, with a player like Mahomes, you could look at it and say, listen, we're out of the playoffs. What are we doing here? They weren't at the time, but that game they were just not going to win. I get the circumstances be what they are, but sometimes you got to look at the franchise asset and put him in bubble wrap and say, it's time to wrap this up.
They are bringing
right?
Eric Bieniemy back, right? Didn't they decide to
can't
do
believe that
so
right? Yeah.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, they sure are.
And Matt Nagy still can't get an interview.
I don't know. I don't know about Nagy. There's got to be some behind the scenes.
Reed
stuff
was
there.
out there today, like beating the drum for Nagy to try to get.
Was he?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think what hurts Nagy is he leaves and all of a sudden the Bears are in the divisional round.
Well,
that doesn't help, right? That doesn't help.
Well, that's a good argument, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, just
okay.
like with Sean McDermott, like everybody thinks he's a great coach. He takes a year off, and all of a sudden Buffalo goes to the Super Bowl next year. We're gonna have some problems maybe for Sean McDermott finding a job interview next year.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's lots of franchises who would still hire Sean McDermott, regardless of the Bills regardless of the outcome of the Bills season.
Sure, but he might not have his pick of the
but
litter like he might have next year
yeah,
if, if
right.
Buffalo underperforms,
Sure. So I want to talk real quick about Brian Daboll because that's probably the one that most people are going to gravitate towards. People seem to love Brian Daboll. I absolutely hated the Brian Daboll era. I couldn't stand him as an offensive coordinator. He goes takes the Giants job, goes with Sean, right? So head coach, GM, stop me if you've heard this before. And he goes 20-40 as the head coach of the New York Giants. Absolutely abysmal time there. Now, mind you, you could say he didn't have a quarterback. I don't know about that, right? We just same conversation. Daniel Jones looked fine in Indianapolis.
Yeah. I mean, Indianapolis was the hottest team in the NFL until he went down.
Yeah.
Right?
That kneecapped all their momentum, right? That was clear that once Daniel Jones was done, they were done. Right. Yeah. That was it. So I'm not really on the Brian Daboll thing. I don't think you can get fired for the way that you coached and then get the best job in the NFL coming back just because you used to be there, right? So to me, Daboll is a candidate of you sit out a year, right? Go take an OC job somewhere, get your name back on the list. I just don't believe that he's really a true candidate. Joe Brady, again, kind of falls in the same category for me.
Do you think, because Brady interviewed today again with someone. I don't remember who it was.
Well, I don't think any of these coaches that are on the list for Buffalo are going to retain Brady. So, yeah, Joe Brady should take the first thing that comes his way.
But if you're Buffalo, are you slow playing this a little bit in the hopes that maybe he'll just take a job and you don't have to tell him no?
Well, wouldn't that be easy? Yeah. I mean, that would be easiest.
What about also,
if he takes a job, it eliminates a problem for you.
Sure.
Right. So if he takes the Raiders job, just as an example, right? If he takes the Raiders job, that eliminates a variable for you. You don't have to let him go. He's going to go take a head coach job. Congratulations. And the fact of the matter is you're likely hiring an offensive coach or an offensive head coach who wouldn't retain him anyway. So,
the other name that we haven't really talked about much, we talked about it a little bit last week. What do you do with Babich? Is there a chance that he comes back if you go hire a offensive-minded head coach? Do they retain Babich for some familiarity there on the defensive side of the ball? Knows the players.
Continuity matters here. Continuity matters. Again, I think younger head coaches have a tendency to have fewer connections to the position coaches. That they need to build the staff. I think Clint Kubiak's a little different because he's just got more gas in the tank there, given family history. Right. He and his dad are far more connected than any of the other coaching candidates, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I think younger coaches have a tendency to struggle to build a staff. So Babich has a better chance of staying if you hire someone like Clint Kubiak, or if you hire somebody like not Clint Kubiak. If you hire somebody like Anthony Lynn,
Davis Webb, who was a player, Babich coached, right?
Yeah.
There's some authority,
and Babich, was a really good position coach, and I just don't think you ever got to see him as a defensive coordinator because he's under the thumb, right?
He's running Sean's scheme. Yeah.
Nothing he could do was ever going to be good enough because the moment the game got hard or out of control, Sean would just take over and then tell everybody that he took over, right? So I don't know if you ever really got to see Babich do what he wanted to do as a defensive coordinator. But most defensive coordinators are beholden to the wishes of their head coach. I don't know if that's necessarily unique in this situation.
Yeah, what I think is unique is the threat of I'm going to take play calling away from you if you don't do what I tell you to do kind of thing. And by all accounts, Sean had wanted to surround himself with yes men, right? That's why Daboll got run out of town. That's why Leslie Frazier got run out of town, right? And then from that point forward, it was a bunch of guys that you were just elevating from position coach situations. Yeah. So
and Babich came from the tree. His dad was, his dad had been in the league forever. Bobby Babich, again, really good position coach. And I don't expect to see him as defensive coordinator for the Bills, right? I really don't. If he had a few more years under his belt as a DC, I think that conversation is probably a little more likely, but I just see no reason why a young coach would want to keep him, although it is possible that they would.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's interesting to talk about, like, because that's part of this interview process too, right? Like, it's part of this interview process is, what's the staff you're going to build? Like, who do you want to bring in? I think part of it is also like, show me their name and your cell phone, right? Because it's like, don't tell me that you're going to bring in Anthony Weaver and like you've never spoken to the guy before because he's not coming to Buffalo, right? So I think you're right. Like, Kubiak has the ability to kind of build a much better coaching staff right out of the gate in terms of like known names, right? Like, I think Kubiak would be able to go out and get guys where you're like, oh, I've heard of him before. He's got a pedigree, coached in the league for a long time. Whereas, a Scheelhaase or a Webb may have to go out and get hotshot position coaches to come be their defensive coordinator because, just as an example, right? Like we'll use Anthony Weaver. Like, maybe he's not going to come coach under a 31-year-old Davis Webb. Right, like a 45-year-old's like, I'm not going to go coach under a kid I've never known before. So I think there's something to that as well. It's just interesting to think about because he's a name that I think has gotten lost in this. Like, it's fairly telling that he didn't even get a head coaching interview with Buffalo, and like he's an existing coordinator for the team. So you haven't heard him taking any other calls. Like, I don't know if he's sticking around to try to see if maybe he's got a job after this season, but. Just a guy that kind of came up in conversation that we hadn't talked about yet.
So I think for next week, we're going to play a fun game. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pull position coaches from the Sean McDermott era, right?
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to tell you the game that we're going to play because I know you're not going to study for it. So I know you're not going to screw me on this.
Me. I don't do show prep.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game, position coach or former American gladiator, and I'm going to pull the real names of the American gladiators, and we'll just see if you can tell me who the Bills passing game coordinator.
Joke's on you. I am a American Gladiators aficionado. So,
there's no way. There's no way. Yeah, but I think that'd be a fun game, right? Like, it was position coach or former American gladiator. I agree. I agree here, right? Like, to me, young coaches, where they struggle most is the organization often has to surround them with the right position coaches in order to mitigate the things that they're not going to know to do, because it's not a job that you can go to school for. You know what I mean? Like, this is, you walk into the building and you just figure it out. And we saw, like, when McDermott got the job, and he kind of did this on the offensive staff for a little bit, was he at least, whenever there was a young offensive coordinator, somebody who hadn't done the job often, there were former offensive coordinators, at least in the building, right? That's why when Joe Brady was the quarterback's coach, former offensive coordinator, Aaron Cromer, former offensive coordinator, like there were multiple. Mike Shula was on staff, like former offensive coordinator. So there were those pieces were there. That support system was there. But with the younger coach, you just have to be understanding that those pieces likely are not going to be built. And the organization has more pressure to build that staff for the coach. And Bobby Babich, great position coach. I think the DC job was a little early for him. But again, the Bills are interviewing multiple candidates under 35 years old at this point. So what do I know?
Yeah. So actually, did you see the news that came out today about Chris Shula and his interview?
No.
So Chris Shula, who's the defensive grandson of Don Shula, who's the defensive coordinator for the Rams.
Yeah.
Apparently, the reason that Pittsburgh hired Mike McCarthy is because they were ready to hire Chris Shula, and he bombed his interview. Like, absolutely bombed his in-person interview with them. Like, failed to impress their top, like their top guys. Like the reports used the word bombed in his interview, and that's just hilarious to me. That, like,
it always makes me curious how this news come out.
Do it. Yeah.
How does this news come out? You know, like, they're not in the room. I'm not trying to white knight for Chris Shula. Believe me, I'm just curious when news like that comes out. You really have to talk about the organization, right? Because that stuff should. Well,
it was no different than when Tomlin got hired in Pittsburgh. Like, did you hear that story about him with Miami?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he interviewed with Miami, Mike Tomlin, and they didn't hire him because he was, quote, too hip hop to be an NFL head coach. Now, Mike Tomlin, like, in what world is Mike Tomlin too hip hop to do anything?
Yeah,
and then he goes on and he's like, obviously did what he did in Pittsburgh, and like Miami is still floundering and doing what they're doing in Miami. Haven't made the playoffs since Tomlin took over in Pittsburgh.
I mean, if you took Mike McCarthy's stats and Mike Tomlin's stats and blinded both names, you wouldn't know the difference. Like,
yeah, that's true. That's true. The only difference is that one might get Aaron Rodgers to come back for one more year. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but McCarthy probably has a better shot at bringing him back if the franchise wants to bring him back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's another piece. Like, do we have any idea what's going to happen with Tomlin at this point? Because it's been radio silence from all
He said he's going to take a year off because he can't go anywhere else unless Pittsburgh hires a new head coach. Yeah. So now that they've hired McCarthy, well, I mean, he's got to sit for a year. He's still under contract. Yeah. So he's probably going to go do TV, I would think. I don't know. Maybe they'll just like he did with Pittsburgh. Maybe they'll just wheel Bill Cowher off the CBS set and roll Mike Tomlin right on, and we won't miss a beat. And they'll just let Cowher talk in a back room somewhere. Like just tell him he's doing remote hits from a secondary location or something, and just let him blather on. Because all he does anyway. Yeah,
I whenever it comes to coaching interviews, I always get really nervous, right? When you hear the rumblings of what happened in the interview, just because those interviews are pretty cled doors. I think it says a lot about your organization.
It's usually a very small like that leaks population of people that are in. Yeah.
That stuff should never come out, right? Like, we're not hearing how these interviews are going for Buffalo. That's a good thing, right? Sure. Like, that's the way it should be. You shouldn't hear anything. You should not know how they went. You should just be like, oh, they hired this guy. I liked him. Or, they hired this guy. I have no idea who he is. We as fans should
He's
not.
He's got a strong jawline, so I think
hey, that's mattered. That's mattered in the past.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the head coach, all the new young head coaches. Like, so
it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it's the three young guys. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with Kubiak. Like, if they talk to him this week, it probably means that they're going to wait to do an in-person interview. I doubt that they would hire him off of just a virtual interview. Yeah. But if he's not willing to speak with them virtually this week, then, I think as Buffalo, you probably have to move on because, and I don't know. I mean, if I'm Kubiak, like, do I want to go coach in Vegas with Tom Brady over my shoulder and being tied to Mendoza? Like, does anybody think Mendoza is going to be a good NFL quarterback? Because I sure don't. Like, so maybe he's just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to chill. This one out. I'm coming back next year.
Yep. It's Mopar72 asks a good question. Is Brian Flores available? What are your all thoughts on him as HC? Brian Flores, if I'm remembering correctly, signed the biggest contract extension to be a defensive coordinator in NFL history this week.
Yep, he re-upped for Minnesota.
Which is good for him, right? Yeah. Because he absolutely was coming up in head coaching circle talks. I love Brian Flores, right? I don't think he fits what you need in Buffalo, right? Because you're bringing another former defensive guy. But I think Flores has gotten a raw deal the last couple times, but
I think what happened in Miami really vindicated Flores because he didn't want Tua, right? He was ready to move on from Tua, and that's by all accounts signed kind of his death knell with Miami. So the other thing too is like, maybe one more underperforming season and he's ready to be the head coach in Minnesota. Like, how long are they going to stick with Kevin O'Connell?
That's what I mean, right?
Not underperforming.
That's why that contract extension makes a ton of sense. And again, you could pay coaches whatever you want. So Flores signing the biggest deal for a defensive coordinator, good for him, right?
Yeah.
Good for him because he's next man up anyway. If something were to happen, he's the guy that's going to take over that team. If you
he's still got his pending lawsuit too, which is interesting.
Wild, isn't it?
We'll see how that shakes out. He might get a settlement check out of this too.
Yep, that's right. So real quickly, Bills are electric states. Bills cannot do a virtual interview with Clint Kubiak per the rules. Correct me if I'm wrong. They can because it's a bye week to the Super Bowl.
So I believe they can do a virtual interview. They can't meet with him in person. The only way you can meet with a coach in person is if you've already done a virtual interview with them. But I believe they can do a virtual interview with him this week, although those rules are really unclear. I don't know if anybody knows what the real answer is. I think Spotrac put something out on Twitter yesterday about that, but Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the rules well enough to speak with any type of certainty around it.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that they can do the virtual interview, but they can't do it in person, and it can only be right now. Like it's got to be within the next couple days, because there's a window to the week. So they don't get all week. The rules here are a little convoluted, but no, they should be able to do a virtual interview, but they cannot conduct an in-person interview. And again, I don't think it's a full week. I think they only have a few days here to get that done. As per the rules. So,
okay, so there was an update. So Spotrac updated this last night. Super Bowl bye week interviews are only allowed if the interviewing team has already held a previous interview with the candidate.
Okay, so that's why like the Raiders could do it.
Yeah, initial interviews must wait until February 9th.
Yeah.
So
okay.
They have not interviewed him before.
Thanks for
so
looking that up.
Yep.
So had they pulled Kubiak again, like this is the problem with playoff teams firing their coach kind of haphazardly. And without a real big plan. I think one of the reasons we talked about at the beginning of the show, one of the reasons you didn't see the McDermott, video, you didn't have a real great press release was because Terry came in and said, this is what we're going to do today. And that was what happened, right? Like, I just don't think there was a lot of conversation about it. It was very sudden. It was, this is what I feel is best for the team. So let's go do it. I kind of think that's what happened here. The presser gave me the opinion and the belief that that's really what happened. I think it kind of caught a lot of people off guard. So I think the reason you didn't get a video package, you got a pretty crappy presser. It's just a product of this is what we woke up and did today, as opposed to if the outcome of this game, ends poorly, this is what we're going to do. It just didn't feel like there was a plan there, Yeah, I can't hear you, bud. It's okay. You're muted. I'll unmute you.
What happens when you have an owner that doesn't know what he's doing?
Yeah.
So
yeah, very true. Very true. All right, we are at the end of our time. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us here on Hashtag Sports. I am Paul. That is Ryan. I'm getting good at this weatherman stuff.
You are,
that's
man.
like multiple
really
weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Join us next week for our new exciting game. Is it a Bills position coach or an American Gladiator? I'm really pumped about this.
Excited.
I'm gonna have graphics and everything. Like, I don't think you understand. We are gonna be prepared for next week. Thanks for joining, everybody. Have a good one. Thanks to Mr. Rogers Holmes, Sean Rogers, Arizona real estate specialist. If you need income property in Arizona or looking to relocate, I just shoveled 3 feet of snow out of my driveway today and it fucking sucked. You can go to Arizona where they don't even have real grass.
You were
it's
thinking
not
about
real
it today,
grass.
weren't you? Yeah.
It sucked so bad. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth? And right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona?
If you're interested, reach out to me. We'll have a confidential, no obligation question and answer conversation. You have absolutely nothing to lose, possibly everything to gain.
As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!